Good morning and welcome to lesson number 3 and getting laid off. Lesson number 1, we talked about getting over the mourning period so you get yourself into a positive frame of mind. And lesson 2, we talked about how to prepare to write your resume so you could hopefully have a very succinct resume and a compelling letter of introduction. Now we're going to talk about all the administrative stuff, the tools you're going to need to make sure you're managing this process correctly. There are 3 tools that I use. Number 1 is a to-do list. You already have a to-do list. I have a to-do list. I break mine into 3 sections. Immediate things to do, especially things I get from my spouse, intermediate things, and then long-term things, right? So that's the pivot point around which your whole day probably revolves. But from this case, from a leads perspective, you're going to need 2 other tools. Number 1, you're going to need a contact management tool, right? A contact list. People with whom you have had contact, what leads they might have gotten you and how you contacted them. So you're going to want to keep a list of all the people you've already reached out to and a list of people that you plan to reach out to in the future. That's 2. And number 3 is your pipeline activity management tool. Here you're going to capture each of your leads. You're going to track who gave you that lead, who your contact is, what industry they're in, where they're located, all these important basic things. And then you're going to start tracking for each of these leads. You want to build a consistent pipeline, right? First contact, research work, first interview, second interview, offer received, negotiation, right? And outcome, right? You're going to want to track each of the steps in the process. And then for me, at the end of my tracker, I have 3 cells. They measure the goodness of fit. Goodness of fit from a culture perspective, goodness of fit from a career perspective, and goodness of fit from a compensation perspective. So those tools are all critical. And if you have that in place, now you're almost ready to start interview process, at least in my opinion. And there's one more tool we're going to talk about, one more fundamental thing that you need to have in the next video blog here, and that's to make sure you have a professional work environment from which to make these calls. More to come. Cheers.